Everyone turn to page 8, grab your pen and get ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the Gippsland Climate Projections 2019 report. Now, you'll be taking your notes on page 8, but the whole report itself is actually attached to the back of your booklet. And these reports are the sort of things that farmers look at to make decisions, to try and forecast what each season is going to be like, to see the projections. And you'll see some pretty high level data, some pretty high level, information that farmers are trying to crunch through and make decisions. Because if you make the wrong decision and you lose a crop, I mean, that could be the end of your business. So these are serious big decisions. So what I'm going to do is delegate parts of this report and get each classroom to read through and write a little description about what you've learnt in the in your section of the report. In those, sorry, I'm just trying to find my page 8. So on here, each class will write just a little bit, 3 dot points about what you've learnt from your section, and then we'll go around and each classroom can just have a spokesperson that stands up and just reads out the 3 dot points, so that everyone isn't reading the whole report. We're all just reading a small section. And the things that you need to think about when you read your section are just here. So think about the graphs that you'll see. You'll see this sort of thing. So have a look at those and try and explain in 1 dot point, I suppose, what exactly the graph, if there is one in your section, says. Think about the years that are referenced, the key figures. So there might be some important, differences in temperature that are mentioned, or differences in rainfall. So that'll also be an important thing. Some of them reference specific areas. So talk about that. Talk about parts of Gippsland that'll be particularly affected by your section, and if there are differences between the medium to high emission scenarios. Now, emission scenarios is something that I wanted to just quickly run through with you guys before you set off and read your section of the report. You'll see in there references to emission scenarios or to RCPs. Now, this is just a way for us to compare research about climate change. So obviously climate change is one of the biggest issues facing the world at the moment, which is saying something considering all the things that are happening in the world at the moment. So there's lots and lots and lots of research being done by scientists all over the world into climate change, and which is great. But an important thing about that is making sure that research can be compared between different researchers. So what they've done is they've come up with these representative concentration pathways, or emission scenarios. So there are low, medium and high emission scenarios that just mean that you can compare them. So researcher A in Victoria versus researcher B in California in America, they can come up with different scenarios, but they can use these emission scenarios to say, well, we're sort of talking from the same book here. So a scenario is basically a number of amounts of different emissions. So, a high, say a high emission scenario might say that every person or a high percentage of people in the world continue driving fossil fuel burning cars. So that emission scenario is going to be very steep, because it's making the assumption that many, many people are creating emissions that are making climate change worse. A low emission scenario might say, well, in 2020, half of the people who own cars are going to buy electric cars, and that's going to greatly reduce the number of emissions. And so that scenario is going to be much lower. So if you look at the 2 tables on the screen now, you'll see that the high emission scenario on the left there is much more severe than the medium emissions. I hope I've explained that in a way that you guys can understand, but basically it's just a way of saying we're predicting the future here, so we can't say exactly what's going to happen, but here are some different scenarios based on how the world community tackles climate change. So that's that. So what we're going to do is, there are 3 sections in this report. Well, there's a few extras, but there's 3 important ones. The first one is rainfall. So if the students from Nagle College could tackle that rainfall section, you'll see it's on report page 3. And there's also some information on page 6, but most of it's on page 3. So if you guys could just have a read as a group and identify 3 key points from that. The second section is extremes, and we're going to give that to Wonthaggi. So if you could refer to pages 3 and 4, Wonthaggi, and just get those 3 key points. And Mafra, could you have a look at the fire danger and sea level section on page 5 and just put together 3 points? And I'll give you, say, 5 minutes because there's a little bit of reading to do there. And then we will, Nagle's heading off for the day, that's no worries. And we'll just have a quick chat at the end and just sort of share what we've learned. So we'll say to everyone reading the whole report by just reading a small section. So extremes, Wonthaggi, and Mafra, fire danger and sea level. Thank you. Okay, should we start in Mafra?
The first key point that we got was that the median value of 5.8 days per year increase under a high emissions model by the year 2050 of fire season. Is that what? Yep, okay. And second one, sea level rise 4 millimetres a year by 2050. And third one, fire seasons will become longer and more severe.
Would you like us to talk to those points a bit more, Amy?
That's okay, I think they're great. That's exactly right. Good reading of the report. Thank you, Mafra. I actually found this when I was reading a bit earlier, found this site I thought would be kind of interesting to have a look at while we're talking about this. I wonder if this will work. Just to show you guys, like when you were talking then about sea level rises, I know that Inverloch, you know, you guys will all know a lot about and be very familiar with Inverloch. So this website, coastalrisk.com.au, shows us exactly what that sea level rise will mean for that region. So while we're looking at the Inverloch here, so this at the moment, this dark blue, that is the current high tide in Inverloch at the inlet there. And the light blue around that dark blue, that is what it will look like in 2100, in the year 2100, if there's a 0.74 metre increase in sea levels. So you can just see there like huge amounts of land. Imagine all these homes here that are on the edge. These are the people who will be most impacted by that climate change if it does occur. So yeah, so a real human impact there to what you guys were just talking about. Thank you very much, Mafra, for that. Let's go back to fire danger and extremes are what we're going to hear from Wonthaggi. I can see you guys have been typing into the chat box. So they've said hotter days and nights are expected to become more common due to the extreme weather conditions. The current average shows about 35 degrees is expected to increase from 3.6 to 6 to 18 days per year. So at the moment, the temperature only goes over 35 degrees 3.6 times a year on average, but that's expected to go up to possibly 18 days a year. So a huge change there. The warmer climate is expected to bring heavier rains and increased rainfall. So possibly a bit of a silver lining there for people looking for more rainfall, but heavier rains, of course, lead to those extreme events that we don't want to see, that certainly those people in Inverloch certainly don't want to see heavier rains and increased rainfall. So yeah, and I actually did the, unfortunately Nagle College had to rip off quickly, so I did the rainfall one there. You can see the medium and the high emissions tables that were in the report. And I found by reading it that Gippsland rainfall can naturally be quite variable, but that trend will continue to be dominant. In the high emission scenario, 29% less rainfall is expected in the spring by 2090, and spring will be the driest season for producers, which anyone who's got a garden knows, spring is not a good time to not have any water. So that's not ideal. So yeah, that brings us to the end of today's session.